If you thought that Magnus Carlsen was done inventing elite level blitz openings,
nope, wrong again.
because in this game he pioneers the Queen's Plow, a follow-up to the tried and tested Pure Plow. Now his opponent here goes for the Queen's Plow declined, not playing pawn a5. Why are we calling these moves the plow? Well, think of this plow, not this kind of plow, even though I'm sure Magnus is familiar with those ones growing up in rural Norway. Now we see Magnus copying his opponent's moves. Who's playing with black here? Well, it's the elite level blitz player, Arjun Erigaisi, a top 20 player in the world. Magnus doesn't care. He plays what he wants. You have the center. I'm not fighting for that one yet. Finally, we get c5 from Arjun. He commits that Sicilian type move. This is titled Tuesday, by the way. Early event, 3 minutes on the clock, as you can see on the left here, plus they get a second per move. Magnus now goes knight c3, breaking more rules, leaving all 4 central pawns on their starting squares. You very rarely see that. We now get knight c6, and finally Magnus commits a pawn in the center. We get pawn captures, knight captures, d5, very principled. And now if you want to put some pawns in the center as white, this is pretty much your only chance. The computer says e4, top move here. But of course, Magnus doesn't do that. He drops this knight back. He's looking at the c5 square, but now d4. Arjun storming through the center here, kicking the knight into e4, and if he took here, he can already get a great game with this kind of follow-up. Rook e1 or bishop blocks, different options, but these are some of the really easy plans for black. Connect the rook, centralize them, e5, dominate the center. Big advantage. But we saw knight d5 played. Also a natural move, looking at this weakened b4 square, but Magnus doesn't care what black's doing. He plows forth, boldly ploughing where no one has ploughed before, and now bishop f5 comes, x-raying that weakened diagonal, looking at c2 in combination with knight b4. Magnus doesn't care. He hops forward with the knight, pressuring here, and now all hell breaks loose on the board already. So the computer's top way to play here is jumping with this knight into b4. However, Arjun goes with this knight, and this gives Magnus an extra option. He could have taken here with a very complicated game, both sides with chances, but he takes here, an even better move, made possible when the knight left the protection of the pawn. So Arjun plays the top move back, takes that one off, queen recaptures. Why would you give up that great piece? Well, it's to land this knight c2 fork, forking queen and rook. So what does Magnus do? Captures the knight in the center. We now see knight takes on a1, but here's the kicker for black that leaves white with a small advantage. You can go bishop h6. So even though you're currently in exchange down, you're attacking 2 pieces at once. So the queen took in the center, bishop recaptures. It now gives this rook some room, which it immediately uses. I mean, the lines are complicated. b6 the top computer move, knight c2 second, but this one third, not so bad. We now get bishop takes on b7, so yes, you still walked into a fork of those rooks, but it couldn't be avoided giving back an exchange. But here Arjun truly goes wrong, because he should extricate this knight. It forces Magnus to win back an exchange like this, and even though you're a pawn down, when the rook hits the d-file, you've got the check nicely covered. You can still fight from here with the minor pieces. White's not got the bishop pair. But what we see in the game is rook captures knight. This one is now chopped off the board. Arjun takes here, winning back a pawn, defending his knight, preparing to move it. Very tasty, not too bad at all. But look at the evaluation bar. The computer absolutely hates it. And Magnus is a minute up on the clock here. He took Arjun into the woods, and what to do? Now the problem is rook d1, and look at this king. It's in a world of pain, plus in combination with the bishop pair. So f6 forced to stop the mate, and now Magnus has many good moves, but he goes bishop d5 check, forces e6, bishop drops back, rook is invading, exposed king out here, that is pretty naked. This should have a PG rating on it, right? And so g5 from Arjun, just trying to give a bit more breathing room. F3 from Magnus, looking at potential e4 ideas. And so here Arjun plays a bit reactively. You know, knight c2, top engine move, heading for e3, but he goes bishop h3, getting away from e4, coming as a threat to hit that bishop, still holding the pawn, cutting the king, very nice, but bang, Magnus changes tact. Instead of pushing the e-pawn, pushes the g-pawn, locks this one in prison. So we now get king f7, covering e6, the bishop no longer does of course, Magnus checks, and what to do? If you run to this nice cubby hole you created earlier, well then there's bishop f8, with rook g7 nasties to come. You know, f5 is now forced. Things are dropping, king's exposed. These ones over here are still offside. So we see king e8 played instead. Magnus takes this pawn. Finally the knight escapes from the corner and king f2 now played. Very sound move, cut some knight jumps. Rook a1 looks to activate. Is Arjun counter-attacking? Well, Magnus now plays a move to try and put a lid on it. It's not the engine's top move. You know, you can start checking or drop the bishop back, etc. But Magnus gives a piece now, but to open his rook on the bishop at the same time. And it's a practical move to try and alleviate the pressure on his own king. So we get check played. Now king g3, check. The king captures here, but you do win this one back. Rook g7 now goes after the pawn, and what to do for black? So many loose and weak pawns. Knight e3, it's your only hope to get counterplay against this white monarch. The bishop hit, slides to d3, and now if you go knight f1, looking for some mate ideas around here, you're never in time because king g2 can always come the minute rook h1 comes. So the knight hops to d5, looking for knight f4 check. This rook captures. Magnus says check. Take my bishop, do your worst, so what? I'm 3 pawns up here. So king e7 was played, king h4 now from Magnus, knight f4 finally comes, but rook a5 and Magnus looking to mop up pawns, and even after king f6, he plays this classy move, sadistic, precise, checking, all of these squares now covered, the king therefore forced back, and you chop this one with check. So it comes via d6 into the centre. Rook a4, e5 supports the knight, and this is awesome. Magnus out here finishing games in style, smashes that knight off the board, pawn recaptures, king h5, king e7, and now look at this. It's the ride of the Valkyries to finish the game. 5 pawns against this lonesome rook. And they're supported by a bishop, and even just for good measure, real sadistic now from Magnus Carlsen, endgame goat. He picks up the final pawn of black, and after this move of pawn b6, Arjun throws in the towel. Well played, Magnus. You ploughed me down with your Queen's Plow. This move on move 1, give it a go. It's a lot of fun, and maybe we'll get the results of Magnus. Who knows? I hope you enjoyed. Do hit subscribe to never miss a future video, and see another incredible game, check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.